Sabah al-khair ya tulab. So when I graduated from college, my first job was working with the International Fellowship of Evangelical Students as a staff worker with the local student movement in Israel and Jerusalem. Azar Ajaj, our speaker this morning, was my first boss. When I met Azar, I was struggling to understand a land full of trouble and conflict, violence, sometimes hopelessness. Azar, during the years that I spent in Jerusalem after college, was a model of kindness, graciousness, and hospitality. He loves his people, and he works apparently tirelessly for their good. He serves the Baptist Church in Nazareth, which you may have heard of as Jesus' hometown. He serves the Baptist Church in Nazareth as a pastor and preacher. He shapes and trains leaders in the church in Israel and Palestine through his involvement at Bethlehem Bible College and now Nazareth Evangelical Theological Seminary, where he serves as president. He reaches across dividing lines in the church in Israel and Palestine to develop friendships with Catholics and Orthodox and Messianic Jews and to break down the dividing walls that exist in that land. We're very privileged to hear from Azar this morning, so please join me in welcoming him.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone, and it's a great honor for me to stand this morning and share with you the Word of God. It looks like some people, a part of the room here left. No, it's black somewhere. Thank you for those who are staying. First of all, I would like to bring you greetings from our seminary. We're a small seminary with a small faculty of about 10 and number of students, about 60 students. And most of these students are getting trained for their ministry in the local community. We're speaking about a small Christian community in Israel and a number of 37 evangelical churches in all the country. We're very small, but we believe that God is calling us to serve in this country, and I hope that this morning I would be able to share a little bit more about our situation as a church in Israel. For our talk today, you can see it here, I picked up the story of Gideon, and it's a very challenging story. And when we read the story of Gideon, we find out that the story starts not in a normal place. Gideon was threshing wheat in a hole in the ground, and this is not the place you do that. Usually you do that in an open area, so allow the wind to carry the straw away and keep the wheat. However, Gideon, our friend, was doing that in a hiding place, in a hole in the ground, in a wine press. And if we read the passage, if we look, it's a long story, I'm going only to read a few verses, we could understand that the reason of this was his fear from a group or a nation that was occupying their land and called the Midianites. And just reading few verses from chapter 6, we can have more understanding of the situation and the nature of those people. It is because of the power of Midian was so oppressive. The Israelites prepared shelters for themselves in mountains, cliffs, caves, and strongholds. Whenever the Israelites planted their crops, the Midianites, Amalekites, and other eastern people invaded the country. They camped on the land and ruined the crops all the way to Gaza. Here again appears the name Gaza, and did not spare a living thing for Israel, neither sheep, nor cattle, nor donkeys. Please understand, these people who were occupying that land, the land of Israel at that time, were not only normal occupiers. They were cruel people. They enjoyed torturing the people. They did not steal the crops. They did not take only the sheep and the cattle. They enjoyed burning them. They wanted to humiliate the people of Israel and to plant fears in their hearts, and they were very successful. And the picture of Gideon trying to smuggle some food to his parents or to his family in a hole, it's a clear picture of what these occupiers caused the Israelites to behave like. And in that moment, in that hole, when Gideon was hiding, trying to do to smuggle the food, the angel of the Lord passes by him and greets him with a strange greeting. He says, "The Lord with you, mighty warrior." Now, please understand with me that Gideon might understood this person as making fun of him. A mighty warrior. Gideon was not a brave man fighting or standing in front of the king of the Midianite, fighting with him. He was hiding. He was not leading a group of soldiers and going to fight the Midianite and the other nations. He was a coward person, afraid. And Gideon might consider what this man was talking to him as kind of mocking him, but he did not think about it this way. He took it seriously. He was thinking about this greeting in a serious way, and it appears that this person, Gideon, had been frustrated and thinking about his problems for a long time. He was searching for questions, and he has no answers. He has no one to answer his question. His people are suffering. He is suffering. And he could not understand where is God. And at that moment, when this person greeted Gideon, Gideon spelled out a list of questions, back-to-back questions, and he was challenging God. Where is God? First question he asked, if the Lord is with us, then why has all this happened to us? It's a very legitimate question for a person who's suffering. Where are you, God, in the midst of our suffering? And Gideon continues with his question, where are all the miracles that our ancestor described to us? We heard about you, God, or we heard about God that he worked in the past. But where are you now? Is God only the God of the past? This is probably a similar situation when Lazarus passed away and Jesus came and Martha came to meet Jesus and she said, if you were here, my brother would not be dead by now. And what she was telling Jesus, I believe that you, in a certain moment, a certain point, you could work, but now it's too late. God, and Gideon is saying, where is God? We heard about his miracles, what he's done. But it looks like all what he heard is a nice story in our Sunday school, but it's not a real story that we can experience in our life, in our days. It seems that God abandoned us, betrayed us, and gave us to the hand of the Midianites. It looks like Gideon has a great pain and suffering from the situation. It looks like he was thinking. This question did not come suddenly. It looks like he was thinking about his situation, analyzing the difficulties, trying to understand what's happening. And Gideon, just looking at all the details of the situation, he came to a conclusion that all of this is beyond his abilities. I can't do anything about it, God. It's beyond our abilities. We are so weak as your people, and we cannot do anything. And as it looks like Gideon was concluding his talk with this man, apparently God, in the end, something like that. This situation, this problem, is not ours. It's God. We're so weak to deal with it. It's God's problem, and if God is God, let him come down and solve it. This is a very difficult moment when we think about it. And sometimes we pass through these moments when we feel incapable to do anything. We feel that we're so weak. That the problems we're living in, they're beyond our ability, and we think that it's only God can do anything about it. And if He is really God, let Him show us, His strength. Apparently, God doesn't discuss with Gideon. He doesn't argue with Gideon about the reasons why all this happens. Actually, God doesn't answer Gideon's question. He's not reasoning with him why all that is happening to his nation. All what God is showing or telling Gideon or showing him that He cares about the salvation of His people. God is saying, yes, it might be my problem, but you go with your strength. I send you. Wow. You go. This man is a coward person hiding. And God is still looking at him, his eyes, and saying, you go. I send you. Now, this is not the first time that God is calling anyone from the biblical passages that we read. It happened with Moses. And you remember what Moses said, oh, God, I can't talk. I don't know to talk properly. Please send someone else. And it's happened with Jeremiah too. Just when God called Jeremiah, He said, I am so young. Please think about someone else. And Gideon is not an exception. Gideon also saying, I can't do it. And he brings 3 excuses. The first one is saying, my tribe is the smallest, is a small tribe and unknown. He's from the tribe of Manasseh. Actually, it's a half tribe that lives in Israel and half lives in Jordan. And he said, my tribe is very small. What Gideon was saying, that we have no influence on the national-wide. No one will listen to our tribe because it's so small. God, it won't be me. You're wrong. And if it's not enough for you, God, let me remind you about something. Another thing, that my family is the smallest in the tribe. Let's assume that my tribe has an influence in the nation, yet my family has no influence in the tribe. It will not convince the tribe to go to the other tribes. So God, I'm sure you're mistaken. It's not me. No one should go. And then God, let me remind you about the last thing. Even if my family is strong, even if my tribe is big, I am the youngest in the family. I have no saying in the family. God, you're surely not talking to the right person. It shouldn't be me who should be going and saving Israel. Now, let me pause here a little and draw an analogy between Gideon's story and the story of the Christian Arabs, evangelicals in Israel in particular, and in the Middle East in general. In some ways, our story is similar to the situation of the Israelite at that time. Christians in the Middle East were oppressed for the last 15th century, 1,500 years. We were not able to freely live our Christian life. We've been hiding inside the walls of the church because this is the only place we can practice our worship or our freedom and I believe that was very tough on the Christians, and maybe still with all the news that we're hearing in the Middle East. And I believe that only recently, maybe 30 years ago, God passed by our country, took the initiative and came to our area and called the church in Israel, Palestine, and the Middle East to rise up. And we took that moment and said, wait a minute, God. We have an open account with you. We have to get some answers. And we're puzzled. We're puzzled. Why? what happened to your church in the Middle East, in our area? And what happened to your church? Oh God, why does that church, the place that the church was at birth in, has no more than 2% of people? Oh God, this is not the only question we have. We have more questions, God. Can you tell us why Christians have to pay taxes only to keep their faith? As we are buying our religion, why do we have to be identified by the language we are allowed to talk, even the greetings we use, the clothes we dress, so people will identify us and treat us properly? Oh God, we have more questions even. Why have Christians to pay? Why Christians were not allowed to carry out the mission you called us to carry? Why Christians who were active and working to fulfill your call were put to death and punished? Sadly, this is one of the pictures that we're seeing right now. This is the letter N in Arabic, indicating that that ISIS is using to put on the houses of Christians to say that these are Christian homes. These are the questions that we were asking God. And that's the same way as God treated Gideon, He treated us. He said, it might be my problem. It might be my problem. But you go with your strength. I send you. God was challenging the church in the Middle East, the church in Israel, to carry the message and the commission that He gave to Gideon to save his people. Excuses, of course, comes. Oh God, you're a little bit late. We was a major group of people a few years ago, or a few centuries ago, many centuries ago. We were probably 90%, but now we're very small, God. You really don't mean it that we go and save our people. As Arabs, God, we're only a small number of the country, only 20% of the population of Israel. But that is not the whole story, God. As Christians, we're only 10% of the Arabs. We're very small in number as Christians, and most of these Christians, even our nominal Christians, those who are practicing Christian God, not more than 3% of the Christians. We're speaking about a small group of people, maybe not exceeding 5,000 people. And God, we're sure that you're talking to the wrong people. We cannot save anyone. We're so weak. We're a minority, in a minority, in a minority. God, you must be mistaken. But God was silent. He was silent, the same as He did with Gideon. He just ordered us and left us with His message to go and save the people. Now let me go back to Gideon's story. Let me go back to the Gideon story. Gideon wanted to fulfill or to obey God's call, so he went and gathered 32,000 men to fight, 32,000 soldiers, and came back and was very proud with what he did, showing that, God, now I am ready to carry out the mission that you gave to me. I have 32,000 soldiers. And amazingly, God did not like it very much. He pulled the rag from under his feet, and he reduced the number of the people that Gideon has from 32,000 only to 300 people. And what God was doing here was taking what Gideon was depending on and leaving him without anything. Our hero, Gideon, has no choice. Either he puts all his trust in God or he withdraws. He has no choice. You know, I want you to imagine with me what happened there. And it's very challenging. Gideon went around and gathered a big army, relatively a big army, although it's a small army comparing with the Midianites. But he was able to convince these people that it's possible. Although we're small, but we're 32,000, and we can find the Midianites. It will be possible. Now, God did not like it. He reduced this number to only 300. Now, Gideon has to stand again in front of this small number of people and convince them. And please try to imagine this moment with me. He tried to convince them that it's possible to do it. It's possible to overcome the Midianites. Logically, it's not possible at all. And I wonder, I really would like to stand in that scene and look at Gideon explaining to his army his military strategy, how he's going to do it. And I was wondering what made these people follow Gideon. And I tell you what I think happened there. These people looked at Gideon and saw in his eyes the faith and the trust and obedience to God. And they said, we are willing to go with you. So choosing to trust in God, choosing to have faith in God and to obey God, although the situation looks very difficult, is the key for Gideon's success. And if I want to ask why God is doing these things, I think that he's doing these things in order to help us depend on him. God wants us to fulfill his mission by depending on him. He wants to show us his power. He wants to teach us to trust him and depend on his resources, not on our resources. And if we look in the history of Christianity, we'll find that people that God used, and still using even, are people who accepted the great challenges and did not have anything except trust, faith, and obedience to God. This is a very challenging issue for us. I want to go back to our story. As a small Christian group in Israel, God is calling us to serve him, and we don't have anything. We're small. We're poor. Sometimes we could also be kind of oppressed by the wider community we're living in. And God was putting us in this situation. It's either we have faith in him, trust in him, obedience to him, or we withdraw. And I tell you something, if we don't, as Christians in this difficult land, if we don't have this faith and trust, it's better if we leave the country. So either we trust God and obey him and have faith in his calling, or either we leave. Better if we leave. But this is also a challenge for you as you're going to your studies and trying to fulfill God's purpose in your life. You'll find that God will put you in this corner, that in order to fulfill his calling to your life, you should have trust, have faith, and obedience to him. And this is what the church is having in the Middle East. With all the suffering, the church has no choice but to look at God and say, God, although we're very small, our armies, all our resources are very limited, but what we have, we give it to you, and you use us to save our people. I want to conclude with a challenging thing that happened with Gideon's story. This challenging thing called partnership. Now, Gideon was called to do the work. We saw how God is pushing away many of the people who even Gideon's brought. So Gideon and 300 people were called to do the job, the fight with the Midianites. But Gideon, when he found out that he's defeating the Midianites, he said, wait a minute. It's the moment to invite my brothers, not my tribe only, but whole Israel, to complete this victory. The victory was already completed, but he let them feel that they're part of what's going, and he was calling the people that did not fight to enjoy the victory and celebrate with a small group that God called them to do that, the victory that God is doing. Now, this situation, I call it partnership. It's a very important word in the Christian ministry. And I am so much moved when I look back at the last 100 years and see whom God has used and still using in land of Israel, small piece of land with a small and forgotten people. Although you may not be called to do the ministry there, although you're not called to take part of the war that's happening there, and I'm speaking here about the spiritual warfare, not the physical one. Although that's not the calling for the most of you, yet I think you are invited to partner and celebrate with us what God has been doing. You know what? The victory, we're one body. The victory there, the success of the church is not only ours, it's also yours. I invite you first to trust in God as young people going through the life and have faith and trust in Him, but also invite you to see your role in the greater mission that God, and the greater work that God is doing around the world, and take part in that. We're calling you to look at your brothers and sisters and think about them and celebrate with them the victory that God is doing through them. May God bless you.